The pain was unimaginable. Her body was a map of destruction, bruises, burns, and gashes that cut through her skin like a cruel story of torment. And yet, the girl did not scream. Not anymore. The alien general towered over her, a menacing figure in silver armor, his forearms crossed in judgment. He watched her struggle against the bindings that held her to the cold metal table, a twisted smirk playing on his face as he adjusted the settings on the pain-inducing device above her. His species had long deemed humans fragile, insignificant, and weak, and they were about to prove it. Still defiant, human, the general's voice echoed through the sterile room. You should be grateful. Most would have broken by now. Her breathing was labored, shallow. Her name was Eva, and she was the last of her kind, a girl from a destroyed world. Earth, a planet once filled with life and hope, was now a distant memory in the galaxy. In its place, a fragmented species scattered across the stars, shackled and enslaved by the most powerful force the galaxy had ever known, the Galactic Empire. She had been taken to raid, just another human, one among the last of Earth's survivors, abducted by the alien Empire for experiments. The Empire had always regarded humanity as inferior, weak, docile, and easily broken. To them, she was just another specimen to study, to push beyond its limits, to see how long it would take for a human to finally perish under the most unimaginable tortures. Eva's teeth gritted as another surge of agony shot through her body, her muscles twitching uncontrollably. She could feel her consciousness slipping away, darkness creeping at the edges of her vision. The pain, the endless torment, it was all too much. But still, she did not scream. She had been here for what felt like days, maybe weeks. She had lost track of time. All that mattered now was the silence of her thoughts, the flickering memories of Earth, the green fields, the wind in her hair, her family, gone. The general leaned in, his cold, reptilian eyes narrowing. You see, he continued, his voice low and mocking, your race's persistence is the one thing I find amusing. After all this, you still think you can survive. But you're nothing. The sooner you accept that, the easier it will be for you. Eva's heart thudded in her chest, a steady beat, a defiance she could not extinguish. She wasn't going to beg. She wasn't going to break. She wasn't just some weak human to be torn apart by the hands of a cruel empire. The girl clenched her fists, struggling against the restraints that seemed to burn deeper into her skin with every movement. The general's eyes glinted as he reached for a lever on the side of the machine. He was going to increase the intensity again, break her completely. His voice cut through the air like a sharp blade. Perhaps we'll just see how long it takes for your kind to truly die. How long before your spirit crumbles? Eva's chest rose and fell with ragged breaths, every breath a battle, her heart racing. Despite it all, her mind was clear. She was not going to give him the satisfaction. She had seen so many of her people broken by the Empire, turned into nothing more than husks, their spirits shattered. The Empire believed humans were nothing more than fleeting creatures, weak, fragile. But Eva was different. She had something inside her they hadn't yet understood, something they couldn't measure. Her thoughts flickered back to the past, to the last moment before Earth had fallen. It had been a cruel thing, watching her planet burn. It had felt like the end of everything. She remembered the faint whispers of defiance among the last surviving humans. But the Empire's overwhelming force was too much. They had arrived in their massive warships, their weapons more powerful than anything her people had ever seen. The invasion had been swift, and humanity had crumbled under the weight of their might. But now she was alone, the last of her kind. As the pain machine's hum grew louder, Eva's mind began to wander, searching for any shred of her strength. She had learned to endure. Her heart, her mind, they were stronger than her captors believed. She couldn't explain it, but something deep inside her had awakened. She could feel it, like an ember flickering in the dark, ready to ignite. Her body was breaking, her mind slipping. Yet she held on, because she knew, somewhere deep in her bones, that there was more to this than they realized. Humans were never meant to die quietly. And if she was going to die here today, she was going to show them just how wrong they were. The general watched as her body twitched violently, the last remnants of resistance fading. But something changed. His eyes widened just a fraction as Eva's fingers twitched. A spark of defiance lit in her. Not in words, not in screams, but in silence, in her unwillingness to succumb. Eva's last conscious thought before everything went dark was this. This was not the end. The hum of the machine stopped. The room fell silent. The girl was dead, or so they thought. The silence in the cold, metallic room was deafening. The general stood motionless, his arms crossed in contemplation, watching the lifeless form of the human girl. Her body lay still, but something was wrong. The usual pattern was clear. Humans broke. Their pain spiraled into nothingness, and they died. It was the same outcome every time. But this was different. For hours, the general had left her to rest, allowing her body to process the violent torture she had endured. He expected the body to remain unyielding, another dead human to be discarded. But the longer he watched, the more he sensed it. There was an anomaly, an undercurrent of something he couldn't quite grasp. Eva's chest, once still, rose slowly, barely perceptible at first, like the gentlest of breaths. The general stepped forward, his mind racing. He knew what had happened to the others. No human had survived this level of torture before. The machines, the knives, the electric shocks, they were designed to kill. They were designed to break them. But this girl had something else, something neither the general nor his species could understand. He studied her carefully, and then, as if obeying an unseen command, her fingers twitched. A small sound, like a gasp, slipped from her lips. She was breathing again. The general's heart skipped. No, this couldn't be. He leaned down, his face inches from hers, his breath cold. Impossible. Eva's eyelids fluttered. Her pupils dilated, adjusting to the harsh light above her. The wounds on her body, deep gashes, burns, and broken bones, began to heal, tissue knitting together before his very eyes. Her once pale, broken face regained its color. She was coming back. The general staggered backward, instinctively reaching for the weapons at his belt, but then stopped himself. He had seen death before. He had seen species claw their way back from the brink of life. But never like this. This wasn't survival. It was something else entirely. Eva's eyes opened fully, locking with his. Her gaze was unwavering, sharp, like a blade waiting to strike. "You should have killed me when you had the chance," she said, her voice hoarse but steady, filled with a quiet fury. The general's jaw tightened. He had underestimated her. Perhaps worse, he had underestimated humans. They were supposed to be weak, broken. This girl was defying everything he knew about their species. The very core of the Empire's conquest of Earth had been based on the idea that humanity could be easily eradicated, subjugated, and controlled. Now, standing before him, was a girl who had returned from the brink of death. The room seemed to pulse with an energy that wasn't there before. A strange hum in the air, a sensation he couldn't shake. He had never felt this before, not even in the most dangerous of battles. The general's hands clenched into fists. How? The word escaped his lips before he could stop it. Eva slowly sat up, her movements deliberate, controlled. The bindings around her wrists had been torn apart during her revival, the restraints lying useless on the floor. "How am I still alive?" she repeated, the anger in her voice barely contained. "Because you don't understand humans. We don't die easily. And when we do, we come back." The general's mind raced. This was impossible. Nothing in his species' medical knowledge could explain this. It was as if her biology had defied the laws of nature itself. "I will report this to the Emperor," he said coldly, though there was a flicker of doubt in his voice. This wasn't just a human. She wasn't simply an anomaly. There was something darker at play here. Eva stood up, her body now completely healed, as if the torture had never happened. She was taller than he remembered, her posture more commanding. Her face was hardened, no longer that of a terrified captive, but a warrior, Someone who had stared death in the face and come back stronger. I don't need you to report anything, Eva replied with a chilling calmness. What you need to do is listen. The Empire thinks it can control us, but you're mistaken. We will never be your slaves. Not now. Not ever. The general's eyes narrowed. This human girl, this thing, was not what he had expected. He had tortured her, broken her, and watched her die. And yet, she stood before him, stronger than before. Your race is fragile, the general hissed. A moment of weakness, and you collapse. We control the galaxy, human. There is nothing you can do to stop us. Eva's expression shifted. Her lips curled into a faint smile, and her eyes sparkled with something the general had never seen in a human before, a promise. You haven't figured it out, have you? She whispered. We are not fragile. You were never meant to break us. And soon, you'll see just how wrong you were. The general's breath caught in his throat. Before he could react, she turned away, her movements deliberate as she walked toward the door of the holding chamber. For a brief moment, the general hesitated, watching her every step. There was no fear in her eyes, no desperation, just a quiet, simmering anger, and the terrifying certainty that she would be his undoing. As Eva reached the door, she paused. When you come for me again, she said without turning, make sure you come prepared. Because I will make you regret ever thinking you could control me. With that, she left, leaving the general alone in the room with the lingering echoes of her words. He stood there for a long moment, his mind unraveling. This girl was no mere human. She was something else entirely. The general stood motionless, unable to shake the feeling that he had just witnessed the birth of something that would change the course of the galaxy forever. The scream echoed down the silent hallways, the sound of it foreign and unnerving. The general's eyes snapped open as the sudden wail shattered the eerie calm of his quarters. It wasn't a cry of pain, it was something else. A warning. He stood quickly, his instincts kicking in. He knew that voice. Eva, the girl who had died, who had come back. A sharp knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Without waiting for a response, a soldier entered, breathing heavily, eyes wide with alarm. Sir, the soldier said, his voice trembling, it's happening again. She's defying everything. The soldier faltered, clearly at a loss for words. The general's eyes narrowed. He could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on him. Eva, the human who was not supposed to be alive, was once again demonstrating her unexplainable resilience. Take me to her, he commanded, his voice cold, hard. When they arrived at the holding cell, the scene was unlike anything the general had seen before. Eva was standing, her back to the wall, a small crowd of soldiers surrounding her. But it wasn't the soldiers' weapons trained on her that caused the general to pause. It was the way she stood, unyielding, calm, almost too calm. You can't keep me in here, Eva said softly, her voice carrying an eerie certainty. Her eyes locked with the general's as he entered, a challenge burning in them. You're not going to break me. Not now. Not ever. The soldiers hesitated, uncertain. The general noticed their fear. They were trained to handle the worst, but this human, the girl who had died and returned, was something beyond their comprehension. I don't need to break you, human, the general said, stepping closer, his voice a low growl. You will learn your place in this empire. You will become what we need. Eva's lips curled into a small, defiant smile. I will never be what you need. Her gaze was unwavering, her expression filled with a quiet anger that simmered beneath the surface. But it was more than anger, it was resolve. The general's fingers flexed, his mind calculating his next move. It was becoming increasingly clear that something was changing in Eva, something that wasn't just physical. She was evolving. She had somehow become more than human, and it terrified him. Let her speak, a voice called from the back of the room. The general turned to see one of the Empire's top scientists standing there, his face pale, his hands shaking slightly. This is unprecedented. We need to understand her. Eva didn't wait for permission. Her voice rang out, clear and commanding. You think you're the ones who understand power? You're nothing but parasites. The general's eyes narrowed. There was a shift in the air around her, an energy he couldn't place. And he could see the soldiers were no longer just afraid of her. They were scared of what might happen next. "Enough," the general said, but his voice faltered slightly. He didn't like the way the atmosphere had changed. He didn't like the fact that she seemed to be in control now. Eva's eyes flashed with something dark and dangerous. "You really don't get it, do you? You think you've won, that you can do whatever you want to my people. But you're wrong. I'm not like the others." The general took another step forward, trying to regain control of the situation. "You will be brought to heel, whether you want to or not." Eva shook her head slowly. "No, you've already lost. You just don't know it yet." There was a sudden surge of energy, and the lights flickered, as if responding to the force in the room. The general's heart skipped a beat. He had no explanation for what he was seeing, but it was clear. Eva was not the same girl who had been dragged into this facility days ago. Something had awakened within her, something that couldn't be contained. Her eyes glowed with an intensity that should have been impossible. But there was no mistaking it. She was alive, and she was more dangerous than ever. The room pulsed with a tension so thick it was almost tangible. As the soldiers shifted nervously, the general took one final step toward her, unsure of what would happen next. But before he could reach out, a loud crash echoed through the facility, and the walls shook. The power grid sparked violently. Something was coming. The first explosion shook the entire compound. Eva's eyes snapped open as the blast rattled the walls, a sudden shockwave that sent soldiers tumbling to the ground. Her heart raced, but her mind was focused. She didn't flinch. She didn't even move. She had felt the shift in the air just moments before the explosion. The Empire had underestimated her, and now they were about to pay for it. The general cursed under his breath, his instincts screaming for him to retreat. He barely caught a glimpse of Eva before the room was filled with chaos, blaring alarms, flickering lights, and panicked soldiers trying to regain control. The facility was under attack. "Get her," the general shouted, his voice cutting through the confusion. He was still unsteady, his mind struggling to process what he had just witnessed. The girl who had died and come back to life, now standing before him, glowing with an unnatural energy. She wasn't just surviving. She was evolving faster than any species in the galaxy. Eva stood, unfazed by the chaos. Her once dying form was now a symbol of raw power, and the fear that the soldiers had once harbored towards her now became something they couldn't contain. In an instant, she moved faster than anyone could track. She tore through the chaos, dodging soldiers as if they were nothing more than statues. They fired at her, but the energy she emanated deflected their shots as though they were mere raindrops. Her movements were fluid, graceful, yet lethal. She was unstoppable. A soldier lunged at her with a blade raised high. Eva twisted, her hand moving with precision to catch his wrist in midair. She didn't hesitate. A sharp twist, and the soldier's arm snapped with a sickening crack. He dropped to the floor, unconscious. His weapon clattered to the ground. The general's eyes widened in shock. He had expected resistance, but this was far beyond anything he had imagined. The girl, the human girl, was systematically tearing through his best-trained soldiers as if they were children playing a game. "Stop her," he roared, but his command was swallowed by the din of explosions and screams. Eva didn't stop. She continued to move, faster than anyone could anticipate, a blur of motion. Each strike, each movement, was executed with deadly precision. She didn't kill, no, not yet, but she incapacitated every soldier in her path, leaving them sprawled on the floor, unconscious or too injured to fight back. The room was quickly filled with the sounds of groaning, battered bodies. The general's mind raced. This wasn't just the last of Earth's kind. This was something else entirely. Eva had become a force, a living weapon. The Empire's weapons, their soldiers, their vast machinery, none of it seemed to matter in the face of her power. She wasn't just a threat. She was the threat. A second explosion echoed through the compound, this one much louder. The entire facility trembled under the blast, sending debris crashing down from the ceiling. Eva didn't even flinch. She turned her gaze toward the source of the blast. There was no time to waste. "You won't stop me," she said, her voice cold and steady, though the chaos raged around her. "I'm not your prisoner anymore." The general's hands tightened into fists. His soldiers, his elite forces, had failed. His carefully calculated assault plans, his intelligence, they had all failed. And now, a single human girl was threatening to destroy everything he had worked for. Without warning, Eva moved again, this time toward the massive reinforced doors of the compound's control room. She didn't hesitate, didn't wait for anyone to stop her. She simply walked, her steps sure and unwavering. The general barked orders to his remaining soldiers, but it was clear that no one could keep up with her. She reached the door in seconds. With one powerful strike, she punched through the steel like it was paper. Sparks flew, and the door groaned as it collapsed inward. Behind it was the heart of the facility's power grid. Eva's hand glowed with an intense light, and without a word, she extended it toward the grid, a silent command. The machines began to hum, and then an explosion of energy surged through the facility. The lights flickered and died. The power grid collapsed. The room was plunged into darkness, save for the faint glow from Eva's hand. The general was stunned. He had thought the facility's power was impenetrable. He had thought that no one could ever breach the control center. But Eva had just shattered that illusion. She had broken through their defenses like they were nothing. And now, the facility was in chaos. Eva turned back to the general, her expression unreadable. She didn't look at him with fear. She didn't look at him with rage. She looked at him like he was just another obstacle in her way. The power was hers now. "You can't stop this," she said, her voice low and calm. "This is just the beginning." The general's heart pounded. He was losing control, losing everything. His mind raced for a solution, but there was no clear path forward. The girl, the human, had become something else entirely, and he had no idea how to stop her. Eva stepped toward the exit, the chaos unfolding behind her. The general's mind raced, but the more he thought about it, the clearer the truth became. He was no longer in control. The galaxy would soon know what a human could really do. The ground shook with a violent tremor, sending waves of fear through the remaining soldiers. The last of the Empire's elite forces scrambled, trying to regain control, but it was futile. The girl, Eva, had become a living nightmare, and now she was unstoppable. The general watched helplessly from the command center, his eyes fixed on the view screen. The compound was falling apart, its walls crumbling under the strain of Eva's fury. The sound of distant explosions reverberated through the air, each one signaling another defeat for the Empire. Eva had already disabled the power grid. She had torn through the facility's defenses like paper. And now she was on the move again, heading deeper into the heart of the Empire's military stronghold. The last of his forces were in disarray, trying and failing to stop her. The general's throat tightened. He had been confident, arrogantly so, that nothing could threaten the Empire. Now, in the wake of this girl's fury, he realized just how wrong he had been. "We can't let her reach the capital," the general muttered under his breath. He had no choice but to prepare for a final stand. If they couldn't stop Eva here, the galaxy itself was at risk. She was no longer just a human. She was a weapon, and she would bring the Empire to its knees if allowed to continue unchecked. Eva moved swiftly through the corridors, each step measured, each decision calculated. The remaining soldiers scattered in her path, too fearful to resist. She didn't need to kill them. She just needed to show them what they had unleashed. With every blow, every strike, she was sending a message. Humanity would never be broken. Her mind raced as she approached the central control room. She had already disabled the outer defenses. Now it was time to end this. She had one goal, to make the Empire pay. With a single fluid motion, Eva tore through the doors of the control room. Inside, the general was waiting, flanked by his final line of defense, an elite group of heavily armed soldiers, their weapons trained on her. "You're too late," the general said, his voice tinged with the last remnants of confidence. "The capital is protected. The fleet is already en route. You cannot stop us." Eva didn't flinch. She stood tall, her eyes cold and unwavering. "You never understood," she replied, her voice calm, but carrying the weight of 1,000 defiant souls. "You thought you could control us, but you underestimated the one thing you could never defeat, our will." Without warning, she moved. The soldiers fired, but their shots were nothing more than a blur as Eva darted past them with impossible speed. Her hands were a blur of motion, grabbing, twisting, disarming, leaving her enemies incapacitated before they even realized what had happened. The general watched in disbelief. His elite soldiers, men and women who had been trained for the most lethal confrontations, were falling before a single human girl. She wasn't just strong. She wasn't just resilient. She was relentless. Eva reached the general in a heartbeat. He raised his weapon, but she was faster. With a single, graceful movement, she knocked it from his hands. The general's face twisted in fear as he stepped back, realizing just how outmatched he was. "How?" he gasped, his voice barely audible. "How are you?" Eva didn't let him finish. She moved in close, her face inches from his. Her eyes burned with an intensity that sent chills down his spine. "You made a mistake when you underestimated me," she said softly, her voice dripping with finality. "And now your empire's finished." The general's breath quickened, his mind racing for some way to salvage this. But there was nothing left. His soldiers were unconscious, the compound was collapsing, and the girl standing before him was more powerful than anything the Empire had ever faced. Eva's gaze didn't waver. She wasn't here for revenge. She wasn't here to kill him. She was here to end this, to make sure that no more innocents would suffer under the Empire's tyranny. As she raised her hand, the lights in the room flickered. The power grid was already unstable from her earlier assault, and now it began to fail completely. The Empire's stronghold was crumbling around them. With a final glance at the trembling general, Eva turned and walked out, leaving the ruins of what had once been an indomitable force in her wake. The general watched her leave, his hands shaking, his mind reeling. The Empire was crumbling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The last hope of the Empire was gone, and the galaxy would soon see that humanity was no longer the weakest link. It was the force that would bring the Empire to its knees. The sky above the shattered compound was painted with fire. The once imposing citadel of the Empire lay in ruins, its towering spires reduced to smoldering heaps of rubble. Eva stood at the center of it all, breathing in the air of victory. The Empire had tried to crush her, tried to break humanity. But now, she was more than just a survivor. She was the reckoning. Around her, the remnants of the Empire soldiers, those who hadn't fled, were gathered, their expressions a mix of fear, awe, and disbelief. They watched as the girl who had once been their prisoner now stood as the destroyer of their reign. She wasn't just a symbol of rebellion. She was the living embodiment of everything they had feared, a force they couldn't control, a power they couldn't fathom. Eva surveyed the devastation with cold, calculating eyes. The mission had been clear, to bring the Empire to its knees. And now, with the last of their strongholds crumbling, it was time to make her final move. The general, what was left of him, had been left to cower in the dust. She had spared him, not out of mercy, but because he no longer mattered. The Empire no longer mattered. The galaxy was about to change. "It's over," Eva whispered to herself, her voice almost drowned by the sounds of distant explosions and the crackling of dying power grids. The battle was done. The victory was hers. And yet, as she looked around, she knew this was just the beginning. In the distance, the final remnants of the Imperial fleet retreated, their ships scattering like frightened prey. The galaxy's greatest military force was in disarray, its once proud fleet now nothing more than a fleeting shadow of its former glory. Eva's eyes narrowed as she watched them retreat. The fight was over, yes. But the war was not. The Empire may have been shattered, but the galaxy still needed to be rebuilt. Her people, Earth's people, needed a future. And she was going to give it to them. She turned toward the survivors, the humans who had fought alongside her. They were the last of Earth's broken people, the remnants of a world crushed under the weight of the Empire's boot. But no longer. They were free now, and Eva would lead them into an era of unimaginable power. "Gather the others," Eva called out, her voice strong and unyielding. The humans who had once been captives now stood as her allies, as the first of a new force. The sound of their footsteps grew louder as they gathered around her. They had seen what she was capable of. They had witnessed the destruction she had wrought. And now, they knew what she would do next. "You're all free," Eva said, her gaze sweeping across them. "The Empire is gone, but the galaxy is vast, and it's time for humanity to take its place." Her words hung in the air, charged with an electric anticipation. The survivors exchanged looks, unsure of what to do next. Eva had given them freedom, but now she was offering them something far greater, a future. The general had believed humanity to be weak, fragile, easily crushed under the might of the Empire's superior forces. But Eva had shown them the truth. Humans weren't weak. They were survivors. And more than that, they were capable of greatness. Now, she would lead them to that greatness. "We will rebuild," Eva said, her voice growing more powerful with each word. "Not just Earth, not just us, but the entire galaxy, and we will not ask for permission." Her eyes burned with determination. This is the beginning of a new era, and humanity is going to make its mark on the stars. As the survivors rallied behind her, Eva turned toward the horizon. The smoke from the burning ruins rose into the sky, but it didn't feel like an end. It felt like a beginning, a promise of something greater, something unstoppable. In the coming days, they would build an army. They would claim the galaxy, not with tyranny, but with strength, with unity. They would carve out their place in the stars, a force to be reckoned with. The Empire had believed it could control the universe. It had believed it could crush humanity. Now, humanity would control its own fate. The sky above began to clear, the first light of dawn breaking through the clouds. Eva's eyes gleamed with purpose. As she turned toward the rising sun, she knew one thing for sure: the galaxy would never be the same again. And neither would she.